Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Stories in Motion class. I'm here with Alyssa. Alyssa, say hi to everyone.
Hello.
Alyssa and I will be working with you today. First of all, want to say on behalf of Alyssa and myself, how sorry we are that we can't be there live, but this is the next best thing. And we're going to do the program as if we were there in your wonderful space. And I'm sure within the next week, we'll be back live and in person and continuing programming like we always have. So first, what I want to do is introduce to you today our poem by Billy Collins. I'm going to go on to share screen. And I'm going to bring up the poem called The Lanyard. What I'll do is I'm going to read through the poem, The Lanyard, and then Alyssa and I are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the lanyard itself. What is the meaning of that? And what does this poem mean for myself and Alyssa? Then I'll read it again, and Alyssa will move through the poem, really emphasizing the words that come out to Alyssa as she's moving it, how it goes, let's say, from her ears, her hearing, into her mind, and then through her body. And perhaps they overlap. We don't know, but we will certainly talk about all that after we read the poem the second time. So before we get started, I want to first show you all what a typical lanyard looks like. Alyssa, did you do these when you were in summer camp or in school?
Oh yeah, I used to make these all the time as a kid and either wear them on my wrist or like seen here, you attach it to a keychain and you would trade them or come home and give it to someone at home. Um,
It's
I
it's
used
a
to have all the different beads and the different colors and stuff.
And did you do different stitches? I know there's like a box stitch and all kinds of different stitches that one can use.
Very fancy. I'm sure I couldn't recreate it now, but I definitely tried as a kid.
So I remember also many moons ago when I went to summer camp, we used to go to what we would call a bungalow colony upstate New York. And we had a summer camp at the bungalow colony, and all the friends that I was with, when the weather turned bad, it was raining, we would have to go into what we call a arts and crafts shack. That's what they called it. And there was an arts instructor, and they would teach us how to do this. So I remember also very vividly the memories of making a lanyard. So it's actually very relevant to both Alyssa and I. So let me read you the poem. I'm going to allow you. You are able to follow along as I read it. Let me just see if I can get it in a slightly larger font. The Lanyard by Billy Collins. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater, from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic stripes into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and two clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift, not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the two-tone lanyard from my hand, I was sure, as a boy could be, that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Wow, Alyssa, such a powerful work.
Yeah, every time I read this poem, I feel like I hear something a little bit different, but it always has the same impact. As if I read it for the first time, it really hits you, the gravity of it.
I do agree with you 100%. And I will say, Alyssa and I have been working for many years together now, and we've used this poem in the past. But I agree, reading it right now with you, maybe it's also because this is our first time doing it as a recording via Zoom. It felt fresh and more powerful than it ever did.
Absolutely.
So maybe what we could do, Alyssa, is I could read it again and you could interpret it through your movement. And then this will allow our audience members to have a look at that. I'll put it on the big screen, so I'll read it, but they don't have to see the words. They'll just watch you. So if you can give me a moment, I'm just going to set that up, and then we'll get to it. 1 second. And maybe if you want to mute yourself, that would be good as well. Alyssa, can you pin yourself, or I don't know why I can't. The Lanyard by Billy Collins. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one if that's what you did with them, but that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. Oh, she gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education, and here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and two clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a much smaller gift. Not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the two-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. So that was beautiful. I could see Alyssa move as I read the work, and it became almost like an inspiration for me as I was reading it, Alyssa, to watch your movement as I read. So that was beautiful. I'm going to ask Alyssa a few questions actually about the piece, but what I'll do is let me go back to share screen. And this way we can see the lanyard once again. So let me just get my screen set up. Whoops, there you go. Alyssa, you can see the words now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're going to ask, I say we, because I think that you might have the same questions for Alyssa, because it's a recording. I'm going to say what I picked out of the work, and what was so moving to me is watching Alyssa move, the words themselves. I want Alyssa to kind of describe a little bit what she did to describe the movement, and also how and why. So the first word in the first line is, the other day I was ricocheting slowly. So talk to us about that word ricochet.
Yeah, when I hear ricochet, I think of almost like an elastic band being pulled out, and then automatically it's snapped back in. And so he's speaking about a memory. He's speaking about this lanyard. And in that first line, to me, it almost feels like he's setting this scene to reflect on the past, reflecting about this lanyard, giving this gift to his mother. But whenever you're reflecting on the past, you're always brought back into the present, right? You're thinking, and then you're pulled back in. And he's realizing now, almost in that sharp way, an elastic band would come back in, that snap, that he then speaks that the lanyard wasn't enough. The gravity of the lanyard maybe wasn't enough to repay his mother. So when thinking about that, and it was interesting because being at home, we had these walls. So I thought about really almost, I'm picturing him in his childhood bedroom, and it's bringing those memories and it's ricocheting the memories in.
Did being in a room, because we have performed this work on stage, we performed this work at other senior communities, but did it resonate, the word ricochet, differently, because now you're actually doing it from a room, and that's the opening line in a way? So how is that different?
Yeah, I think environment definitely impacts the work. So being kind of more in an enclosed space rather than a ballroom or a bigger area where I could travel in, it almost made the imagery stand out even more. Like I was feeling these own walls, and I was more so putting myself in the shoes of the writer.
Very interesting. And then I would say the next line, or the next line after, the other day I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater, from typewriter to piano, from typewriter to piano. So why did that resonate with you, and how did you interpret that?
Yeah, so going off of ricocheting, right? When you're moving underwater, it's almost the opposite of what I just described. I'm kind of going to demonstrate that while sitting now, but thinking about like you're moving slowly when you're underwater, and you're moving very intentionally. And there's that like weighted gravity that's happening. There's a tension that's happening. And I'm feeling from that this heaviness, right? So I'm picturing him, how I was feeling in my own space, feeling the walls, more of an enclosed space, being grounded within himself, and he's navigating this memory, this room, until he lands on Lanyard. So this brief exploration of him kind of moving through his room to land there. So I was really, really thinking about being underwater and that more intentional navigation, which is a very odd sensation when you're not underwater.
So what do you mean by that? I mean, we all understand that, you're imagining being underwater, and that influences your movement, um, informs your movement, I should say. But how do you interpret that as you're moving? Obviously not underwater. Like, what do you feel? What do you see? What do you imagine when you heard those words, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano?
Yeah, I think the writer is emphasizing this slowing down of time. And so I was trying to reflect that in my own movement. Um, and I kind of, which is interesting because he talks about swimming later. But I did this motion, right? That to me signifies water moving through water and pushing through, navigating through water. And again, it's that slowness of time that's allowing him to reflect on this memory. So I was imagining really from the beginning, right, being in the room with him and then kind of moving almost in a very similar way to if someone said, what would it feel like to walk on the moon? That's what it feels like, that like anti-gravity sensation where you're forced to slow down.
I've been reading, so I go through my phases of Billy Collins. Alyssa and I, when we first started working together, I was actually reading Billy Collins quite a lot. He was really influencing me. And then I loved bringing him to our workshops, but then I sort of went in other directions. But lately, I've been reading him again. And it's so funny, Alyssa, what you said about memory. He has written some beautiful works that deal so strongly with memory. Now he's in his 80s, so he is obviously beginning to reflect back quite often about his own past. And it's interesting that you said like the slowing down, the movement almost brings us in a visual sense through our life back to the beginning. And he does that with water.
Yeah, I really like how you said that. I would fully agree.
So let's go to now the key word here, which is the first time he brings up the word lanyard. So we said, he said, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor. When I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. And this is the first time that Alyssa, as a mover, is hearing the word lanyard in the poem. Obviously, it is the title, so it's a key element of this work. But that's a tough one, Alyssa, because it's going to inform the entire piece, the word lanyard. And you hear it now for the first time. So I have to ask you two questions. Number one, what went through your mind and body when you heard the word lanyard, and why did you do it that way?
Yeah, I think so. The lanyard's obviously the staple of this piece. It's what we're coming back to. And immediately I was wanting to represent the lanyard through my body visually as accurately as possible. And I think when creating movement, you're not only thinking about how it looks or how it sounds, you're also thinking about how it might feel. And so I feel like the lanyard is a very tactile word because those who've created one, right, you're weaving it, you're feeling the material through your hands as you're creating it. Or when you receive one, maybe you're wearing it on your neck or your wrist, or you're holding it in your hand. It's an object that you can think about, that you know that feeling. So my goal was to do two things to kind of represent the process of creating the lanyard, right? Because that is what the writer is ending up representing. That his process of weaving and creating this lanyard, he's comparing that to everything his mother did for him. So I kind of did movements that represented this repetition and this weaving. And I kind of was trying to experiment with the camera, as we don't always have this, of coming closer, right, as I'm doing now, and kind of representing through my hands, okay, it was this finite movement to make the lanyard. And I also did it in a larger way, standing, of these linear lines moving back and forth to ultimately create the lanyard. And I also tried to depict maybe what the lanyard would feel like, both on my wrist, putting it on my neck, handing it to somebody. So that was kind of my process with it. And ultimately repeating that movement just as the word is repeated often. And I think it kind of brought back when you're making a lanyard, right? It's a very repetitive process. You're doing the weaving over and over and over again, similar to the comparison of a mother's work, right? They're constantly doing all these things for you. A small gesture versus a grand life. So I was kind of trying to play with that, with the movement, and repeating my movements to kind of mimic the repetition that he's emphasizing in the writing.
Wow. I mean, you summed it up as far as, the mother and the relationship between mother and the lanyard, and the metaphor of the lanyard and the mother, is really powerful. And I also wanted to say, Alyssa, that we've never worked via Zoom before like this. And I did very much notice you're moving towards the camera and away, which is something that is an additional plus, when we work this way via Zoom as opposed to in a live audience.
Yeah, it gives the viewers a different perspective that we wouldn't have
Right.
in person.
So as we went down through the poem, he talked about the Adirondack Lake, going to summer camp. And he's sort of thinking, okay, well, I guess I can make this as a gift for my mother, which is really tongue in cheek. It's really, it's so funny because we can all imagine, because he's such a great writer and he can bring us back to what his sensibilities were as probably an 8 or 9-year-old kid. We can imagine that as well. Like, what are we doing with this thing? But we always knew that no matter what we did at that age, if we didn't get it, we can always give it to our mother as a gift, right? Which is what he did here. So, and then he starts really becoming, I would say, plays with the idea, what is in exchange for the lanyard? What is this all about? And I think that, in my opinion, the funniest part of the piece, and the most poignant as well, is when he starts saying, she gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. And I just love that. I love that. And I can read it over and over and over again to myself, and I have so much joy when I hear that piece. But as a mover, as a dancer, as someone who is thinking of the words as she moves, how did you approach "She Gave Me Life"?
Yeah, immediately, I was thinking about, I always think about life as this, and I mentioned this word a moment ago, grand, right? So wanting to make your movement as big and sweeping, fluid as possible. So trying to represent that in this space, I was thinking about, well, she gave her life holding a baby, right? And the first thing a mother does in this world, right, rocks the baby. And then kind of that swooping motion, that circular motion, just as the planet we live on is round, that kind of, she was the catalyst to giving him life in this world. So I had done this kind of swooping circular motion, as what his mother did also was all encompassing, and that's where that circular motion comes in.
It's interesting, Alyssa, because I myself, you have the movement vocabulary, and it's so fascinating to hear it spoken in so eloquently as you do, because the circular idea, like I never, again, not being, of course, trained as a dancer, I would never have thought of that. But to go from the rocking to the circular motion is profound. And I know that we always talk about like the circle. The circle is so prevalent in not only in literature, but also in religious iconography, like the egg, or the circular motion of and I never thought that if you bring the baby, which we can understand, yeah, so when we see that, our mind goes immediately, but then the circle, that's really powerful. And I think that I wish Billy Collins was here today with us, because I think that would be exactly what he was talking about, not just with that line, but really with the whole piece. This circular motion of the mother and what she does selflessly, giving. And I think the milk from the breast is one of those things, that it's just something that, she is giving her inner self to this particular character, to the narrator, I should say. So, and as we go on to that stanza, we go through the stanza, and he's doing the comparison, right? He's saying, like, she's done all these things, but I've got the lanyard, which is just beautiful. And then, of course, the movement, coming back to what you said at the beginning, which I didn't make the connection actually until now. He comes back again, the narrator comes back again with, and taught me to walk and swim. So I'm going to ask you, we know about the swimming in the opening part, the underwater, but did you sense that when you heard it here in this stanza? Did you sense that continuity?
Absolutely. And I think he's emphasizing these natural things that his mother gave him, right? These, by her just being, right, like we spoke about, the milk from her breasts, like that natural process that she's giving, similar to walking and swimming, something that all humans may have the capability to try and do, but she aided him with that. He didn't discover it on his own. He is giving her he's giving her that appreciation that she's the reason that he can do these things. And I thought of it more in this light, airy sense, the opposite of in the beginning, where I felt this heavy navigation going through water. This felt more like I'm walking and I can swim. Just like now, he can, where he is at this memory he's reflecting on, walking and swimming at summer camp, right? Just such jovial things that, anyone could participate in, but he's giving that to his mom. So I'm hearing it more as the opposite, this a way to navigate through life, but in a much lighter tone the second time he's bringing it up.
And I'm also, just as you said that line about like the heavier part in the beginning and the lighter part here, I also wonder, because you and I both know that both dancers and writers, there's always a reason that we put things into our either movement or into our poems. It's not really random, although sometimes it might seem random. There's a lot of training and a lot of craft and a lot of talent that goes into our either word or movement choice. But I'm thinking also that, and taught me to walk and swim. Well, maybe she's also giving him the ability to remember, because if the beginning opens the moving as if underwater, where you said, you're clearing the way for memory, he's going back to memory, but it is the mother who actually gave him the ability to walk and swim, to be underwater, or to almost get back in touch with his memory.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I just thought of that because of what you just said. I never would have gone there. But that's
that's
powerful.
very profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Go ahead.
no matter what you think about, right, it always goes back to his mother, and the way that you just said, right? Like, he wouldn't have this memory of creating a lanyard for her if she didn't give him life. So it just goes back. It's almost like a dance between the two of them and their relationship. Anything that he does in turn comes from his mother.
And it's also, we've heard in psychological journals and so on, and medical journals, that the formation of the psyche of an individual happens when they're very, very young. I think it's like from 0 to 7 or 8, right? It's they really
Yeah.
So here we are, it is that early period with the mother. And of course, it could be with the father. I mean, it's just the central parental figure but those early memories could, good or bad, are being formulated at that very early age. And she's giving him the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So in the last the stanza before the last one, we sort of talked about the breathing body and a beating heart, where he's almost summarizing, right? Like all these things that she does, and then goes back to what I consider the most, what's the word, Alyssa? Like without a breathing heart, a breathing body and a beating heart, we don't have anything. So almost an anatomical, a genetic giving, because here is, everything that I can do is my DNA or my, so how did you hear it and move through that?
Yeah, I think he's emphasizing almost the material end of it, right? So like really thinking about a lanyard, what is that made out of? And what is the body made out of? And comparing just those two, the body and life and the lanyard. And I think when you hear a breathing body and a beating heart, I'm thinking about your most vulnerable self, right? I did this motion of like this like feeling your heart breathing, and you're presenting yourself, in this case me, in front of the camera. That's is how like vulnerable and stripped down you can make a person, right? Like just the breath is somebody's anchor point. And so he's kind of saying like, here's my body with all these things, and here is this small woven piece of material that I'm giving my mother as a token to this wonderful life. So it's really then coming down to the structure, the anatomy of it, which I think is really interesting.
And of course, the last line that you had brought out, and that was really for you profound, is the last line in that stanza, which is, and here I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift.
Yeah, and that kind of like, I did this representation of really handing it over. But the gift that a parent or gives to you, right? It's not a physical gift. Mm-hmm. They made you. They gave you your body that you're in. So it's not like they gave you something, they gave you you. So I think that smaller gift, that word smaller is so relative here, both in the size of the lanyard and also the weight of it. Um, that I just think it's very profound in that way because it can mean so many different things.
So how about to bring us all home, and because we're almost out of time, what if we read it and you perform it one more time? And I think the reason that might be so interesting is now that we've really discussed it at length, I think that the viewer might have a different perspective this time around of watching it.
Absolutely. That's a great
Okay.
idea.
So let me take you off of share screen. And if you just give us a second, Alyssa and I will get set up.
And I'd encourage anyone, if you would want to try some of the gestures that we spoke about, in your seat, in your room right now, you're more than welcome to do so.
Okay. So give me 1 second. Let me make sure we got everything here. Okay, Alyssa, I'm sorry. Just give me a second while I set this up. Okay. The Lanyard by Billy Collins. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater, from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift, not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the two-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. So beautiful. So
Thank
beautiful.
you.
So everyone, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our program for today. I am sure that Alyssa and I will be back many, many times. But Alyssa, would you like to say any final words to our group?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I hope you enjoyed today's program. I definitely want to echo what Paul said. I hope that we can see everybody in person soon. And I hope that, if anything, this session was able to maybe inspire you to think about both the small moments and the big moments in your life.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. And we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.